What's a story where the bad guys are actually, completely, 100% right, to the point where it's weird the story keeps calling them the bad guys? Every single Donald Duck cartoon, dude usually just wants to chill out without being bothered, and there's always someone bothering him, and then he gets blamed for standing up for his own needs. The older I get, the more I empathize with Donald Duck. Disney understood that back in the day, too. His cartoons were actually more popular than Mickey's because he was more relatable. IRC, when Disney was asked to make a cartoon explaining how income tax helped the war effort during World War II, they chose Donald because he would be relatively frustrated with the whole process at first but learn how it worked. Donald is really interesting actually, because he was promoted to SGT and was given discharge papers in the 80s as thanks for his service during World War II, due to the fact that he canonically joined the army in 1941 in a Disney short. He proceeded to star in the most Disney wartime shorts and be featured on a high proportion of wartime badges Disney designed, over 200 of them. Mrs. Doubtfire, because Pierce Brosnan was really nice and was a lonely middle-aged man who wanted a family, but Mrs. Doubtfire was so mean to him and even tried to kill him with pepper knowing he was allergic. Don't forget that drive-by fruiting. That guy in B movie. Girlfriend leaves him for a fucking B, said B proceeds to gaslight him into thinking he's crazy anyway. That movie sure was weird. Jack and the Beanstalk. Some dick finds the giant's house and starts taking all his best stuff. Also very weird that magic beans has become shorthand for like bad investment or stupid decision. The magic beans were exactly as advertised and had an amazing raw for Jack. Peter Pan. The pirates are just grown-up lost boys that he brought to Neverland. They just want to leave and return to their lives. Tom the Cat. He was trying to rid of a mouse that frequently stole food and trashed the house. Tom was just doing his job as the cat of the house. This is a wild pull, lol, but High School Musical. I'd be pissed if I worked my ass off for years to get the lead in a musical only for them to give it to someone else who didn't technically attend the auditions. In High School Musical 2, they were all such brats about having to actually work at the job they got, and not getting to participate in an event at the country club because they had to work that night. They're not members there, they're staff. Plus the guy was totally right to be mad at Gabriella for leaving a lifeguard shift early unless there was a replacement who took over. Squidward is not necessarily a bad guy, but as an adult you feel a lot more for him and how annoying SpongeBob would be to have as a neighbor, co-worker. Any rom-com where the main character cheats on their partner with the new love interest that they end up with. I was reading a Christmas Hallmark movies story from the other side, where do Wall Street people who are working hard staying up nights to save up money for future marriage and kids realize their partners went away to a small town and cheated on them with a charming local on a whim on Christmas Day. So, they ditch their partners and form a power couple and buy a penthouse in New York and get their happy ending. That weird episode of Friends where Phoebe is convinced her dead mother is reincarnated as a cat so she tries to steal it from its owners, and Ross is presented as the bad guy for pointing out how ridiculous this is. I read that this plot was actually suggested by one of the main writers who had recently lost their own parent. Nobody wanted to point out that it was stupid because they didn't want to seem insensitive, so they all just went with it. Any documentary about card counting told from the casino's perspective. Card counters are made to be the bad guys in these documentaries even though we really aren't doing anything wrong. Casinos are inherently morally corrupt and terrible for communities. They use several tactics to make it impossible for the average person to realize how much money they are actually spending. And card counting isn't even cheating. It's not like how the movies make it out to be. Real card counting is simply looking at the cards as they come out of the shoe. There's no trick. It's just looking at the cards and using a memorization system to keep track of everything. For an apt comparison, imagine being banned from chess tournaments for using your head too much. That's what card counters get banned for, thinking too hard. And casinos make us out to be the bad guy for being above average at one casino game. Insane how we are the bad guys when in reality, they make hundreds of thousands by getting patrons drunk enough to the point that they blow all their savings. Far Cry 4, Pagan Min was actually the good guy the entire time. Granted, he was an awful person, but best of a bad situation sort of thing. The two leader of the Golden Path, whichever one you side with ends up turning on you after you deal W Pagan. Whether they're forcing children and women to be slaves or soldiers or just straight executing them, that's what the freedom fight comes to. AJ, the character you play as, is probably the only good person throughout the whole game, and you get the choice to become leader of Golden Path by killing either Sabal or the chick, I forget her name. But anyways, Pagan was honest to Ajay the whole time, if you wait like he tells you at the start of the game. He comes back and you spread the ashes like your mother wanted you to. That's the proper ending of the game, and it takes 15 minutes. You avoid the civil war and being abducted entirely. I never kill Pagan now, because even though he had Mohan killed, he had Ajay's best interest at heart. Ruthless leader, but he's better than actual terrorists. Answer by you, invaders from a similar thread some years ago. Megatron. The Decepticons were formed due to political corruption and a completely broken caste system. Megatron and the original Decepticons Shockwave and Soundwave were essentially born into the lowest caste on Cybertron, the field workers, miners. They were born into conditions where their only way to stay alive and not be murdered in the middle of the night was to fight in the gladiator pits, where it was kill or be killed. The rest of the Cybertronians Transformers were split into a middle caste and the rich caste. The middle caste were the basic workers, like construction workers, archivers, other low-quality, tedious lives that they had no way out of. The rich caste controlled the entire government on Cybertron. These were the Primes. They share the title with Optimus Prime, but he was not one of them. They kept the lower classes underfoot with no way of advancing their civilization whatsoever. The middle of the night was to fight in the gladiator pits, where it was kill or be killed. The rest of the Cybertronians Transformers were split into a middle caste and the rich caste. The middle caste were the basic workers, like construction workers, archivers, other low-quality, tedious lives that they had no way out of. The rich caste controlled the entire government on Cybertron. These were the Primes. They share the title with Optimus Prime, but he was not one of them. They kept the lower classes underfoot with no way of advancing their civilization whatsoever. The middle class was well off, for the most part, but the low caste that Megatron was in was disregarded completely, treated like trash. So then this gladiator named Megatron starts inspiring all those lower caste workers and telling them that they don't have to live this way. Megatron is the first person who gains traction, and with the help of an archiver in the middle caste named Optimus, not yet a Prime, begins to spread his ideas of freedom and being able to choose your life and what to do. At this point, the Decepticons are becoming a major threat to the higher caste. Rogue terrorist Decepticons begin performing terrorist attacks on various parts of Cybertron, even things like amusement parks, because yes, Transformers had those, and Megatron realizes just how much power that he has. Megatron and Optimus are given a hearing below the High Council to discuss fixing their society, because at this point Megatron and Optimus are the head of the mostly peaceful revolution. The Council does not think that Megatron has had any desire to cause destruction, just that his followers were becoming out of control. It was becoming a major issue, so it had to be addressed. At this hearing, the High Council of Primes addresses the clerk named Optimus for his efforts in trying to improve their society, and offer him the rank of Prime. He accepts, realizing that they may be able to fix their society without a full revolution. Megatron becomes enraged. His closest friend betrays him to join the very system he hated, and he absolutely loses it there. He signals his followers, who were among the audience in the chamber. At this point, the uprising had been spreading throughout the whole planet to bring down the building. Megatron, who had gone nearly power mad, swears to kill Optimus for betraying their ideals and friendship. The building collapses, killing most of the Primes. Optimus and a few others escape. Optimus Prime becomes the leader of the reforming society. Meanwhile, the Decepticons gain more and more power. Thus begins the power struggle between those who want to peacefully reform Autobots and those who want to scrap the entire system, killing anyone who opposes Decepticons. The conflict continues until Cybertron is finally bled dry and they must leave. The devastated remainder of their society, the Autobots, flee from the dying planet, but Megatron gives chase. They eventually wind up on Earth. Megatron was never evil. He felt rage because of the injustice of watching his kin die in the gladiator pits, and his closest friend betraying everything they had worked for and all of their ideals. He was eventually driven mad by power, brainwashing his loyal followers who believed what they were doing was right the whole time. Yes, Transformers has very deep lore. A shame that Bay doesn't try to include this rich lore and history that the series has. Also, this is what happens before G1 the 80s cartoon if you're wondering.